Hello all, it is Nikki here, and for this video I wanted to shake things up a bit and do something that's still writing related and Camp Nano related, but a little different. So I decided to make a story aesthetic. I wanted to do something kind of crafty to commemorate the progress that I've made in Camp Nano this month and just in my writing in general. I've seen the aesthetics that people post for their characters or for their story projects online, and they always look so good, and I've only dabbled in them. I think I've made an aesthetic for one of my characters for one of my other projects. It was really fun, I really enjoyed it, and so I thought it might be cool to try and make one for not my main character, but for the whole story that I'm working on, and to do it in a physical paper copy instead of doing it online so that I could get more crafty with it. Not gonna lie, it was pretty last minute. I think I decided on Friday that I was going to do an aesthetic video, and that gave me Saturday to make the entire collage and also film the entire process. There was not a lot of planning that went into it. I can be pretty rammy when it comes to art projects in that way, sort of wung it, but I actually think that it ended up turning out fairly well. You can decide for yourself when you get to the end of the video. So my initial idea for this aesthetic was just to create a sort of collage of all the most important symbols and ideas that come into play in the story that I'm working on. Put a lot of emphasis on the settings, a lot of emphasis on important objects that come in the story and reflect things about the characters, and some of them are really more abstract things that just had the right vibe. Thankfully, I have a very crafty mother who has lots of amazing things to use for things like this. I didn't have to make a dollar store trip. I didn't have to go out and get supplies. I just used the things that I could find in my house, and as it turned out, I had absolutely everything I needed, which was amazing. So I did have a sort of preliminary plan in mind for how I wanted it to look. I knew that I wanted more sky emphasis on the top left. That is the setting where the story starts. It seemed like it made the most sense to dedicate the top left, the place where our eye is trained to go first, to the place where the story begins. And I wanted it to move towards the bottom right so that you had the sky in the top left where the story starts, moving down to the forest and the land in the bottom right where the story ends up eventually. For some reason, this story always gives me nighttime vibes. Even in my initial front cover that was designed for it years ago, it was at night with a sort of purpley dark blue theme going on, and I wanted to stick with that. For some reason, when I think about this project, that is what comes to mind. I wanted it to have a bit of a tactile element. That I feel like is one of the benefits of doing an actual physical aesthetic instead of just doing it online. I threw in some burlap just for that like rustic feel that ties into certain characters. I used a cotton ball to create a sort of cloud effect in the top because obviously clouds are very significant. That was where my character was born and grew up. I used a tiny bit of tin foil in one part of it because silver is a very important idea in the story. We had some decorative moss that you put in like fake plants. I threw a little bit of that in too. So now that I had a relatively solid plan of what it was going to look like in the end, it was time to start sticking things down. I had a very clear picture of how I wanted the format to be. I didn't want anything overlapping. I wanted it to all look like it fit. I had some vinyl stickers of the Rosgel symbol, which is a very important symbol to the story, left over from when I was promoting the early draft of the story that I self-published years ago. I didn't use them all up at the time, so I still have some of them lying around, and I thought it was pretty cool that I got to use one of them on this as kind of a throwback to the original, and to kind of keep that trend going, I used a little bit of the front cover image from that first self-published version too. Part of me is kind of surprised that I wanted to include that, just because ever since I decided to kind of revamp that project and tackle it again, I've been sort of trying to pretend that early draft never really happened, but it was a part of the journey. And that draft was one of these stepping stones that got the story to where it is today. So I'm mostly over it. I thought it would be a good idea to commemorate that first one and to remind myself of how far the story has come by including this original image. Plus, that it would be cool to have an actual picture of my protagonist as a part of the collage. Then it was time for the glue gun stage. I wasn't sure if all my materials were going to cooperate with me, like the cotton balls or even the burlap, but once again, the glue gun came through for me. So funny story, I totally forgot to turn the camera off at this point, so I just left it running for like a solid 45 minutes of empty nothingness in which the camera just sat looking at the aesthetic that I wasn't doing anything to. Take that lesson from me. Remember to turn off your camera. I had some dead space in parts of the collage. For example, in the vinyl sticker, the sticker itself was black, so it didn't show up very well on the black piece of paper that I was using, but fortunately I had a white marker, so I went over that, made the symbol itself stand out a bit more, which was awesome. I was also able to fill some of the blank space that I had with some abstract designs. I wrapped it up with an image of Tesnil, my villain, that I think I sketched in a Montana's on the table in blue crayon. I ended up taking a picture of it because I was kind of happy with the way it turned out, and it seemed fitting to get him on there somewhere and to let the Montana's sketch live on. Okay, so status update. I just finished the vast majority of the aesthetic. There's still one more thing that I want to add. I'm not sure I have all the supplies for it, but in the meantime, I seriously need to start cleaning up because it looks like a bomb went off in here. Let me give you a little sneak peek. So this is the stage where you're wondering why I'm attacking the aesthetic I just spent hours making with white glue. And I have to be honest, I was a little bit terrified for this part, but this was the part that I've been trying to get to for the entire time. It was one of the first ideas I had. Keep watching and see what you think. So there you have it. The sun symbol is super important to the story, and it's also important to me because the sun in this project is symbolic of the god figure within the story. As I'm sure you can imagine, that is not a symbol that I'd want to leave out of this project, and this whole idea of doing the glue and the sparkles was one of the first ideas I had for this aesthetic. I was super scared when I got to that point, like I said, because sparkles had the potential to make or break the entire thing. But I was super happy with the way it looked in the end. It was exactly what I had in mind, which never happens. That I take as a total god hug, so thank you, Lord. I wanted it to be smack dab in the center and kind of the loudest part of the whole aesthetic because of its importance to the story, but also its importance to me. Obviously, in the story, the god figure plays a significant role. He's kind of the person orchestrating everything, really at the heart of it. I'm really liking the opportunity to look at God in a different way, the way C.S. Lewis did through Aslan or Ted Dekker does through Elion, in ways that can really touch people and that have really touched me. I mean, I remember reading one of Ted Dekker's stories and just sobbing. The way he captured certain qualities and attributes of God was just so powerful. I really wanted the chance to do that with this story, and I'm really liking the role that he is playing in it so far. So because he's so central, I wanted it to be central to the poster. But I also wanted it to be central as a reminder to me. I always wanted to glorify God with what I wrote, but I feel like this draft in particular that I'm working on now has even more of that undertone than before. I've grown since then, I've learned more about God since then, and my heart is really just to glorify him through what I write. Sometimes you really feel that, and sometimes you sort of lose sight of that goal and get caught up in other things. So I wanted to always remember why I'm working on this project, why I'm writing this story, why I write at all, and I thought this was a good way to do that. In the end, I packed a lot into this thing. I've got some artwork that my brother actually did. You can find that on his YouTube channel. I will put the links in the descriptions below. I love the things he's done with some of my creatures and some of my characters from this story, and I really wanted to include them. I'm glad they could get in here. Also some sketches that I did, Tesneal from Montana's, but also my personal favorite character, Rodella Robbinswell. And after the fact, I also added this faux leaf because that is a very significant symbol in the story as well of healing and reconciliation. There's a lot going on here, but in the end, I think it captures the vibe of the story really well to keep the creative juices flowing and inspire me to really push myself to meet my goal in this last week of Camp Nano. On which subject, I am so close. I hit 40,000 words last night. I have, I think, a week left to meet my goal, and I can definitely do it if I stay the course. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I hope that you enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend making aesthetics for your own projects, even if you do it online, because it really is a good way to remind you why you love your story so much. Feel free to comment and subscribe if you feel so compelled, and do not forget to spend some time in the clouds today.